So as I was saying, I think that really what kind of happened was, as I said, my grandpa, and when in high school and before that, when the shoot away machine messed up my shot and the problems were occurring with me and my dad, my grandpa came in and he's like, you know, what Ryan really wants is he wants independence. And he didn't know the situation. He came in from Kauai. He didn't know how good at basketball I was before. I really was considered one of the best in the nation, one of the best shooters at least, but people don't know how good I was. And I'd like to get more videos and I'd like to study what I did and stuff like that. But the shoot away did mess up my shot, did mess up my game. I was practicing wrong and it messed it up, and then my dad tried to fix it, and then dad got messed up more. My dad always helped me with my shot, right? But he didn't know that it was a shoot away machine. He thought that he could like mechanically make me shoot sideways, but he didn't know how I moved into shots. But long story short, my grandpa's like, well, what Ryan really wants is independence. That's not what I wanted. I wanted help. And it was just a tragic situation. No matter what, it would have been a bad situation. But my grandpa didn't make it any better. He made it worse. And then, so then my mom's like, yeah, well, okay. My mom and dad are like, yeah, Ryan wants independence. And then the other thing was my grandpa was like, saying stuff like, Ryan, you can't make things happen. You can't force your dad to shoot with you, My dad was trying to help shoot with me, but, things were getting complicated and things were getting difficult. We didn't know how to fix my shot. And I needed help, And it was a tragic situation. But then my grandpa's like, you can't force things. So then my mom and dad are like, yeah, Ryan, you can't force things. You can't make things happen. And then my grandpa's like, everything's just fine. You have to learn everything's just fine. So my mom and dad are like, yeah, everything is just fine, Ryan. Everything's just fine. But things were not just fine. My shot was messed up. It was a bad situation, really terrible. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the shoot away machine. That's the tragic part. I know that for a fact because I was so good. I was so unconscious, automatic. And that's what messed me up. And even after the shoot away machine, I was still unconscious, automatic, but I was shooting wrong because of the shoot away machine. And then my dad tried to fix things, made things worse. But then the other thing was, my grandpa's like, one of the things he taught was like, you don't make things happen, but you can't change people. It's just that metapsychiatry thing. Like, all you can do is you can only change yourself. You can only upgrade your software. You can't change others. You can only upgrade your software, your own software. And, just take responsibility for yourself. That's all you can do, right? Just take responsibility for yourself. And now that whole like taking responsibility thing that my grandpa's all into, take responsibility for everything and upgrading your software. But my parents misinterpreted that, and they're like, yeah, Ryan, you can't change us. You can't make things happen. You have to take no for an answer. Like your grandpa said, you have to learn to accept bad calls. Everything is just fine. You can't change us. So when I tried to talk to my mom later, like, can I see you and dad? Can I talk to you? Can we try to establish a normal relationship? You can't change us, Ryan. You're never going to talk to your dad's never going to talk to you the rest of your life. I'm never going to see you for the rest of your life. You have to get that through your head. You can't change people. You can't force people to want to be around you or be with you. You can't do that. You can't force things, Ryan. You need that type of thing. But again, it's because they were stuck in the past. They're trying to say I'm stuck in the past. That's what a lot of people will think when they hear me talk about the shoot away. I'm not stuck in the past. The only reason why I bring that up is so I can say it wasn't my fault. It was a tragic situation. I'm not trying to blame them. I'm just saying it was a tragic situation, But they're the ones who are stuck in the past because they're still thinking like, oh, they thought that I have mental issues. They thought that I had a problem, and that's why my shot got messed up. My mom thought it was not because of the shoot away. My mom was like, no, it's because you couldn't handle the pressure and you fell apart and all that stuff. So, and like I said, for many years, my mom would never let me talk to her. This is, after college, I tried to tell my mom about the shoot away machine. My mom, this was after college. The whole college, I didn't talk to her about it because I wasn't allowed to talk about the past because my grandpa made up that rule. Because my grandpa's like, if you're in the flow, you don't talk about the past because you're completely in the present, the eternal moment, the eternal now, So, but after college, when I'm trying to get back in touch with my mom and dad, and they're not talking to me, they think I have schizophrenia because of the quadrille. I'm trying to talk to my mom and dad, and I tell her, I figured out what happened with my shot, with the shoot away. My mom's like, it wasn't the shoot away machine. Wait, what are you talking about the past? Stop talking about the past. Your grandpa said no talking about the past. And it's like, no, it's nothing negative. I'm just trying to let you know it wasn't my fault, and let's move on. It's not because I'm a bad person. They want to think that I had mental issues. and stuff. And I'm trying to tell them I know for a fact it would not have happened. All those problems would not have happened if it wasn't for the shoot away machine. I would have been a huge basketball player. In fact, things would have been amazing. But they want to think that I had mental issues and I was mentally ill and all this stuff. That's what my mom wanted to think. My mom said right when I showed her the Quadra the first time, 2010, when I was in college, I showed my mom and dad the Quadra. They never see me all college. They only visited me a few times in college. And after that, I saw them maybe once or twice when they tried to put me in a psych ward. And that's it. They haven't seen me since. So they don't know that they think I'm schizophrenic, but they haven't had any interaction with me. So my mom's like, yeah, so what was I saying? I forget what I was going to say, but my point is, my mom, I was talking to my mom. Yeah. She thought I had schizophrenia. She thought that there was something wrong with me. She didn't realize that if it wasn't for the shoot away machine, if it wasn't for that stuff, she thought that I had some mental issues, that if it wasn't for the shoot away, no, none of this stuff would have happened. None of the bad stuff would have happened. And my grandpa made it worse with his coming in. Oh, Ryan wants independence. I didn't need more independence. My mom and dad misinterpreted that as, oh, throw Ryan to the side, neglect him, dismiss him, hate him, have contempt for him, make him independent. And then, like I said, when my mom and dad tried to force me into the first psych ward, the psychiatrist or the nurses were talking to my mom. They were saying the psychiatrist said Ryan has no mental illness. We gave him the MMPI and stuff. He doesn't. My mom was like, he's tricking you. Oh my God. And then my mom was like, well, I just want him out of my life. I just want him to be independent. If he's not mentally ill, then why doesn't he get a job? I just want him to be independent. That's it. And then I want nothing to do with him. And then the nurses were like, whoa. They were like, you have some mental issues, lady. And they're like, if you talk to your son like that, or talk about your son like that, he's going to have problems. But my mom didn't understand that because my mom was like, what? Because my grandpa's, his whole thing was like, yeah, really what Ryan wants is independence. And that's the most important thing, because then you transcend ally enemy software, because, then you're not in dualistic software, because when you're independent, then you don't depend on anybody. And then when you depend on people, then if they help you, they're your ally. If they don't, then they're your enemy. And that's dualistic software. And that confirms the self. And that's predator prey, impersonal software, like all this shit. So it's like, no, but my mom and dad interpret that as, oh, so Ryan wants independence, or no, Ryan needs independence. Let's be terrible parents and throw him to the side and never talk to him again, So, and like I said, when I was in the psych ward, I tried to call my grandpa and I said, Grandpa, get me out of here. When my parents forced me in it the first time, and my grandpa said, this is what you get for not being independent. These are the consequences. But later my grandpa told me that he didn't believe me. He thought I was just making it up and they thought I just needed a ride. But because my grandpa was like, you had no symptoms of schizophrenia or any mental illness. How could they have kept you in the psych ward? It was because I talked about that story, how my family, they blackmailed me, they forced me in there. My mom and dad, it was crazy. And they wouldn't let me in there, but I had to pretend like I was suicidal so that they would let me in so I could talk to the doctor. And then my mom and dad blackmailed me, said that they would break my DVDs if they wouldn't let me out, or if they weren't allowed to talk to the doctors. It was a terrible situation. So, but yeah, my point is, yeah, so, and then at this time, this was like 2020, I still want to talk to my mom and dad. I still want to see them. But my grandpa's like, no, what you really need is you need independence. And, once you're independent, then maybe your mom and dad will talk to you. Once you're independent, they'll want to talk to you. But because you're dependent on them, they resent you and you resent them. And it leads to problems because you're an ally enemy software, because so long, that's the consequence of being independent on somebody. And again, I saw this as right wing, white supremacists, like against welfare, against people helping other people, and like all that type of stuff. It's like, and so this is what was going on when I visited my grandpa in Washington. And I was like, yeah, this is again, he's confirming what I thought all along, that he's the one who basically influenced my mom and dad and brought about this environment that's really terrible for me. He basically was like a henchman for my mom and dad, and he set up conditions that were terrible for me. And like I said, and his whole thing was like, oh, if you're in the flow, you can't change other people. You can only change yourself. And again, like when I was a communist and leftist, I was like, yeah, this is perfect perfect right-wing white supremacist ideology that my grandpa has. Like, yeah, don't try to change anything. Just work on yourself. It's all your fault. And my grandpa, it's not your fault. It's your software's fault. But yeah, don't try to change others. But when I was a Marxist, it's like, no, yeah, try to change the system. It's a corrupt system. Try to change it. And my grandpa would maybe later admit, like, yeah, well, it's true. There is the liberal force in all operative in all systems. And yes, sometimes changing can be a part of the flow. But my grandpa would mainly be like, yeah, you can't change others. So just, all you can do is work on yourself. And again, I'd be like, yeah, that's a perfect, like, religious, white supremacist, nationalist way of looking at things. Like, yeah, just maintain the status quo. Don't try to change others. Just work on yourself and just maintain the status quo and be, maintain white supremacy and all that, right? So that's way I thought of it when I was a leftist, anti-white person, right? And I wanted race mixing because I saw myself as Jewish and I saw white people as bad, right? So, but then at this point, I'm my grandpa, I'm in Washington. My grandpa's like, you need to get a job, and the universe is an anti-entropic reordering function. It's based around synergy, and my grandma's rolling her eyes. And my grandpa's like, and so you need to get a job so you can be a part of the creative, synergistic processes of the universe and in counter-dynamic entropy counter-dynamic influence to the entropy of the universe. And it's like, I'm just like, dude. But so then we kind of get in an argument. I don't remember exactly what happened, but the one thing too was, he wouldn't wash his hands again. And part of it was, again, I thought of it was that white supremacist, like, blaming the victim. Like, there's no such thing as germs. Like, the reason you get sick is because of your consciousness. So I always saw that as white supremacist, like, victim blaming. Like, oh, so someone has cancer? Oh, it was because of him. It's because he wasn't in the flow. It was his consciousness. And it had nothing to do with genetics. It had nothing to do with all that type of stuff, right? So that's why my grandpa wanted to look at it. And so my grandpa wasn't washing his hands because in his mind, he's like, so long as my mind is in the flow, so long as I'm in the flow, I'm not going to get sick. And I was like, dude, come on, grandpa, wash your hands. You just shook a guy's hands and he was coughing, and this is the beginning of COVID, right when COVID first hit, and people didn't know what was going on. This is like the first week of COVID. So I was just like, and I wanted my grandpa to not get sick because I wanted to continue to learn from him. And again, at this time is when I first started reading Dr. Horace's books, and I started to kind of understand it. So, like, this is when I started to kind of understand the flow, because Dr. Horace talked about how I was reading the book to my grandpa, and Dr. Horace talked about how a spiritual experience doesn't involve experience. So he said spiritual experience is a paradox, because he was saying experience. Now I understand, but it's different. My grandpa saw it different. My grandpa didn't understand Dr. Horace. He actually did it. His understanding was wrong, and he made fun of me and looked down on me because I didn't understand my grandpa's version. But my grandpa didn't understand it. He was wrong. He's like, everything's energy. That's not what Dr. Horace taught. That's not what Christian Science teaches. It's none of that. It's not everything is energy. But so my grandpa was like, so Dr. Horace said that there's no such thing as a spiritual experience, because he's saying, experience is based around your senses and it's based around appearances in this world, but this world is an illusion, and it's like a hologram, according to Dr. Horace, or which is like a three-dimensional projection from a two-dimensional surface. Like this reality is an illusion, and it's very Platonic. Like it's a illusion. It's a reflection of the world of forms or whatever type of thing. And I always liked Plato, and I thought the quadrant model was like, it basically validated Plato's ideas. Like, this world is a reflection of a quadrant pattern, or a world of forms, especially that one form, the quadrant. And that's the way I saw it, and I thought that I figured it out. And I was like, I proved it. But my grandpa was like, I don't understand Plato. I don't like Plato. I don't understand mathematics. I don't understand that stuff. I think everything is energy. Everything's energy. And, he didn't understand it. So, but yeah, so he said there's no such thing as a spiritual experience, because if you're in the spiritual, you transcend experience, because experience is based around this illusory world. So if you're so I asked my grandpa what he thought about that. My grandpa's like, yeah, when you're in the flow, you transcend experience. Now, it gets complicated, because my grandpa would be like, well, you do sense things and stuff, but you're not attached to any of it. So, like, you're experiencing things kind of, but you're just not attached to it. Also it's like inspiration, like Einstein, his E equals MC squared revelation, that was beyond experience. And it comes through, my grandpa would say, synergy. He said that, Einstein said that, in the pursuit of an answer, in order for the answer to come, you have to exhaust all resources, and then perhaps when you're biting an apple, it will tap you on the shoulder. And the idea was you exhaust all resources, or my grandpa would say, you cannot get there from here, but only he who refuses to accept that will understand that there is here. And the idea is you exhaust all resources, you go all out, you study as much as you can, and then finally when you let go, and that's the flow, when you let go and you're eating an apple and you least expect it, that's when the answer hits you. But the answer is beyond rational, it's trans-rational, like the idea of equals MC squared, right? Which is beyond our senses. Like you don't sense E equals MC squared apparently, right? But it's like my grandpa would say, it's an inspiration that comes through the synergy of all of the study and all of the inquiry that you were in the process of, and then a synergistic inspiration occurs, and that's the flow, and that's a part of the flow. And the flow is letting go and transcending the ego so that you can get the, receive the truth, right? So my grandpa's teaching me this stuff, and I'm finally starting to understand it at this point, kind of, but it's still, my grandpa didn't teach me well. What I explained to you is not how my grandpa taught it. Again, he's not a good teacher. So he was kind of confusing me mainly, but I'm starting to understand it reading Dr. Horace's books, and I'm starting to understand this stuff finally in 2020 when I'm reading that stuff, and I'm starting to understand the flow a little bit, but I still didn't quite understand it. I still didn't. I still didn't understand it because he didn't do that good of a job, but it did at least. I was starting to get an inkling of it. Now I have a better inkling because I understand that, Dr. Horace is very platonic. But at that time, I was starting to get an inkling. And so I started to understand that. I always thought that when my grandpa would be like, yeah, the flow is pure awareness, I was like, oh, it's like a meditative state, and it's like some bullshit like Buddhist, like, I always saw that as white supremacists too. Like, everybody should just be in a meditative state of pure awareness and not think, and, and maintain the status quo and everything, right? I always saw it as white supremacists, but now I started to realize, oh, it's transcending the ego, kind of, okay, and that's not pure awareness, but awareness of the truth. So I started to see that. And now I see, like, how my ego and seeing myself as Jewish kind of shaded the way that I interacted with the world, and it shaded how I was against religion and more of a materialist, and because I was against white supremacy, and I saw white people as bad, right? Seeing myself as Jewish. So now I have a better understanding of that. But back to the story. So I'm starting to learn this stuff a little bit, but then my grandpa, he's telling me, you need to get a job, and and I'm like, well, grandpa, the other thing was, he was like watching basketball. My grandpa kept on watching basketball like a doofus, like a dork, because the basketball players suck now, and I was way better than the basketball players that are playing now. I did things that nobody does, and that's what I want to study. I want to study swag flow, but I'm not going to get into details about that. But I want to get more videos. But my grandpa's watching the games, and he's like, aren't they amazing? Look at them. Aren't they amazing? And I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I was better than those guys. People don't know how good of a shooter I was, how good I was. I have videos, but a lot of the videos were lost. I want to get more videos. It was a tragic thing. I talked about that. And my dad barely recorded my games because he wanted to watch. He said he wanted to watch, and he couldn't record and watch at the same time. And my mom had anxiety issues, and she was too afraid to make mistakes. So I wanted to get more videos of when I was younger, and I wanted to study, and I wanted to fix my shot, and I knew that I was better than those guys. So my grandpa's like, aren't they amazing? When he's watching them play basketball and the NBA and stuff, and I'm like, they're not that good, they're whatever. But he's like, they're just incredible. And I'm just like, well, whatever. And he loves Steph Curry, and I thought that the reason why I loved Steph Curry because Curry was a little bit white, and I always saw my grandpa as a little bit white supremacist. And so I was just watching, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But then my grandpa's like, yeah, well, you need to get a job so you can be a part of Synergy, and you can be a part of the anti-entropic rewarding function. And I always saw this white supremacist, like, worried about work and like, maintaining the status quo and stuff. So, but I was just like, and I told him, I would tell my grandpa, and I told him for years, I was like, well, I discovered the theory of everything. And also, if you guys would have helped me get basketball videos of when I was younger, rather than just throw me to the side and throw me to Kawhi and not help me, and I could have done big stuff with the basketball. I could have done big stuff with the rap because I could always write raps when I was playing serious basketball. But you kept on trying to make me independent and kept on trying to force things. Like, my grandpa's always talking about, like, don't force things, be in the flow. But I was like, you tried to force things, dude. And you kept on trying to do all this stuff, and you ended up screwing things up 1,000 times fold. You ended up having me hurt. I couldn't play basketball. I discovered a theory of everything. You didn't believe it. You basically, what's the word? You basically, like, I was persecuted, essentially, by my family. They thought that I had schizophrenia. Like, I'm like, dude, I could be independent. I could be doing big stuff. I discovered theory of everything, but I'm not getting your guys' support. But my grandpa's like, well, you didn't discover a theory of everything. If you discovered it, then you would have a lot of people be talking about it. But I'm like, well, then maybe if you guys could help me out. But my grandpa's like, I don't know how to help anything. I don't know how to do anything. And that's the other thing. My grandpa's like, he doesn't know how to do anything. He doesn't know how to do stocks. Like my other grandpa knew how to do stocks. He made a lot of money. He did stuff. My grandpa doesn't, my purple grandpa, he doesn't know how to do anything. But and at the same time, ironically, he's making fun of me. My purple grandma was the one who made all the money with the bed and breakfast and stuff and the vacation rentals. So I'm just like, but he's like, you need to get a job. You need to be independent and stuff. And I'm like, dude, if you guys would help me, if I could talk to mom and dad, things could maybe go that direction. Maybe I can get some support, but my grandpa's like, well, they're not going to talk to you because you're not independent. And it's like, dude, why don't you guys just all start acting normal and stop being such weirdos? Like, enough with this goofy stuff. Let's start acting normal. So, but yeah, basically, then my grandpa was just like, he didn't wash his hands. We got in an argument and my grandpa's like, okay, get out of here. And then my grandpa's like, I'm not going to teach you anymore. And then he stopped teaching me. But this was when I first started to kind of understand what the flow was, because before this, I didn't have any idea. I kind of had an idea, but reading Dr. Horror's book, I started getting a little bit more of an idea. So, but I still was confused. My grandpa still didn't explain things well, but I started to get a better idea and I wanted to learn more. But now my grandpa again, and I said this happened so many times. He's like, I'm not going to teach you anymore. I'm not teaching you. And whenever he did that, I always thought of it like he was trying to confirm and try to like justify the way my dad wasn't talking to me. He'd be like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to teach you anymore. So then I ended up having to go back to Los Angeles, and I'll get more to what happened in the next part of the story. But this is the time when I moved again from being a right winger to being a left winger communist again. And I'll kind of describe that shift of what happened.